So Mike Tyson is going to be fighting Roy Jones on September 12th in an exhibition bout. And this has been finalized and officially announced. Mike Tyson has basically said that he doesn't have a slow gear. He's only got one gear, which is like, I guess, fifth gear, full steam ahead. He doesn't know how to pull his punches. That's essentially what Mike Tyson has been saying in interviews since this announcement. Now, it could just be to hype it. Maybe he does intend to actually pull his punches a little bit. Mike Tyson has fought exhibitions before, and if you watched him in those exhibitions, yeah, he dropped his sparring partner, but he did hold back. You know, he wasn't all out attacking his sparring partner the way he would attack an opponent normally. So, you know, maybe it's just Mike Tyson hyping the situation. But even still, even if Mike Tyson is pulling some of his punches, I still can't help but fear for Roy Jones Jr. Mike Tyson been out the ring for a long time, yes. Roy Jones has fought a lot more recently than Mike Tyson. This is true. But Tyson is so powerful compared to Roy. I mean, a solid jab might knock Roy out cold at this stage, because Roy Jones' punch resistance is completely shot, and it has been for years. Punch resistance has never been the same since he got knocked out by Antonio Tarver, truth be told. Now, some of you may not know that Mike Tyson and Roy Jones were actually looking to fight each other way back in the days. It was around the time when Roy Jones fought John Ruiz. It was either just before or just after the Ruiz fight. I forget now. But I remember Mike Tyson in an interview talking about the possibility of fighting Roy Jones. He described Jones as a good-looking Olympic kid and said that he would be, as in Mike Tyson himself, he said, I'd be totally ominous. You know, the bad boy going up against this good-looking Olympic kid. So they were actually supposed to fight way back in the days. This is when Roy Jones was light heavyweight champion. But for whatever reason, maybe it's Roy Jones losing to Tarver or having... Well, Roy Jones came down after he beat Ruiz to light heavyweight again to defend his light heavyweight title. And he had a close fight against Tarver. A lot of people at the time were saying, oh, maybe Tarver was robbed. But if you actually go back and watch it now, I thought it was a fairly comfortable Roy Jones win. It was relatively close. You might be able to make an argument for Tarver, but I think at the time, people were so shocked at seeing anybody who was even competitive against Roy Jones that it made it seem in your mind as though Tarver did better than he actually did. Does that make sense? It was just a shock of the fact that somebody was being competitive with him. Because trust me, back in the 90s, nobody was competitive with Roy Jones Jr. The only time I remember somebody being even remotely competitive was Montel Griffin in the first fight. But even then, Roy Jones was starting to get to him. Before the controversial ending, you know, which was a DQ. And then obviously in the rematch with Montel Griffin, Roy Jones wiped him out in one round. So Roy Jones, Richard Dwyer has said this in several videos. Roy Jones is the closest thing I've seen in his prime to an invincible fighter. He obviously wasn't invincible in his prime, but that's the closest I've seen to an invincible fighter. The gap between Roy Jones in his prime and all his competition was so unbelievably wide. You know, whenever he got in the ring, he was just so fast, so much more athletically gifted than anybody he fought. It was, you got the feeling when Roy Jones was in there that he was just clowning his opponent. In fact, he was clowning his opponents most of the time. He was just clowning them. And he was in there, you know, many times against top-level guys. James Toney and Bernard Hopkins, Virgil Hill, Mike McCallum. He's clowning on these guys. So, you know, Roy Jones back in the days, you know, he was called Superman. And so him against Tyson, it was like Jones had reached such a level where he was just dominating everything and everybody that your mind did start to drift and think, could he actually beat Mike Tyson? Now, Tyson at the time wasn't champion, but he was still a feared and dangerous fighter. He was still viewed as one of the top heavyweights in the world. So, you know, that is testament to how dominant Roy Jones Jr. was in his prime that you could even contemplate the idea that this little guy, who was a small light heavyweight, by the way, Roy Jones Jr. was never a proper light heavyweight in his prime. He was more like a super middleweight, but he stepped up to light heavy. In fact, Roy Jones Jr. has fought as low as 154 early on in his career. So, yeah, that's just testament to how invincible he looked, that people thought he could actually maybe have a chance against Tyson. It was an intriguing fight. I didn't necessarily think, okay, yeah, he's definitely going to beat Tyson, but I was intrigued when they were talking about Roy Jones against Tyson. Most people were. I remember when Lennox Lewis fought Vitaly Klitschko. Roy Jones, after the fight, said, "I'll fight either of them." You know what I mean? That's how gassed Roy was at the time. You know, even Roy believed himself to be such an invincible fighter that he could take on a Vitaly Klitschko or Lennox Lewis. But anyway, fast forward to 2020. Both guys are in their 50s. I think Roy Jones is in his 50s. He must be in his 50s now. I know Mike Tyson is. Both guys are in their 50s. Mike Tyson and Roy Jones, and they're looking to fight an exhibition bout. Yeah, Roy Jones at this point is so washed up, it's not even funny. And of course, Mike Tyson is to some degree washed up, but he's had maybe longer to recover from the last beating that he took. And he's going in there against a much smaller man. He's going in there against a man who, if he lands anything like a semblance of a solid shot, Roy Jones could be out cold for weeks. God forbid, touch wood. So let me know what you guys think about this in the comment section below. Mike Tyson versus Roy Jones Jr. This is going to be on pay-per-view, apparently. Some strange pay-per-view platform. If I can find the name of it here. I'm just doing this on the fly, so bear with me. Okay, it says here, it will be offered on pay-per-view and Thriller, an emerging music/social media platform. But which network will show it on pay-per-view? Because it says and Thriller. So is it going to be pay-per-view on Thriller or pay-per-view on a major network and also on Thriller? Maybe they haven't sorted out which network they're going to put it on. ESPN, HBO. Well, I know HBO don't do boxing, but they said that they would consider for particular events maybe doing boxing again. But this is an exhibition, so how interested would one of these major networks really be? Yeah, it's like a novelty event. It's not really a serious event. So, and look, we know that Mike Tyson generates a tremendous amount of interest. Even now, at 50 odd years of age, people are fascinated with Mike Tyson. And therefore, maybe because of the potential money it will generate, the major networks might be interested. We'll see. Is it something DAZN might pick up? See, to me, it seems more like something they'd pick up because they've already done YouTube boxing. Yeah, they've had Logan Paul and Jake Paul and all that kind of people fight. So this seems like something they might do, given their previous history. Anyway, let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Mike Tyson versus Roy Jones Jr. Will they keep it all pally-pally? Or will Mike Tyson go in there like Wreck-It Ralph, not realizing his own strength, and not Roy Jones Jr. into next week? Let me know, people. It's happening. I'm out. Join me on Patreon. I upload a minimum of 2 podcasts every single week, covering a wide variety of controversial topics, as well as live stream Q&A sessions. Take a look on screen right now at some of the podcasts I've produced so far. For just $3 a month, the equivalent of about £2 a month, you get access to all my new podcasts and my entire back catalogue of past podcasts, including my popular Confessions of a Nightclub Bouncer series. You can listen on your computer or on your smartphone or tablet by downloading the Patreon app from the Google Play Store or the App Store for free. The Patreon app also allows you to download each podcast in MP3. For less than the price of a cup of coffee, you get access to dozens of hours of exclusive content. It's easy to sign up, there's no contract, and you can cancel at any time. So come and join our community of free and critical thinkers by signing up with me here on Patreon today.